Good evening, everyone. Welcome all to Lux Art Institute's studio series with our current artists in residence, Kahn Selesnick. While I usually deliver this speech in front of a room full of people, tonight I deliver this speech from my home with a virtual background from Lux. Next week we'll have a few different backgrounds available on our website for you to use in your own Zoom meetings or to add as the backgrounds on your phone. I'd like to thank the San Diego Foundation for underwriting this exhibition, and I'd like to give a virtual round of applause to our team at Lux for making this fantastic quick shift to digital programming. Everyone has learned a lot, and we're excited for the opportunities that this digital engagement affords, especially accessibility to our programs from those who are beyond the San Diego region and who would not be able to attend due to financial circumstances. Over the coming months, we'll be adding more opportunities to engage with our programs. Please keep an eye out for those announcements. You can also search for Lux Art Institute on YouTube to subscribe, watch our programming, and follow a virtual tour of the exhibition currently on display. I also want to remind everyone that the folks at Giving Tuesday have launched a campaign called Giving Tuesday Now to support those affected by the pandemic in a global day of giving and unity. While Lux is amongst those nonprofits that have been severely affected by this pandemic, we are using this day to give back to the community with a host of child, family, and adult activities over a 4-hour period next Tuesday afternoon, Pacific Daylight Time. 3 donors have stepped forward to match any gift given to Lux on Giving Tuesday up to $3,500. Those matching gifts will go directly to the San Diego Food Bank to help families get access to food in these challenging times. Please support Lux and the Food Bank next Tuesday. If you'd like to support tonight's lecture, you can do so by sending a gift via Venmo using the username lux-art by calling 760-436-6611 or following the link in the chat. Your gift will be 100% tax deductible. You may also ask questions throughout tonight's program, and we will have a Q&A session after they have presented. I first met Nicholas Kahn about 14 years ago when I was working at a museum in San Francisco, and he and Richard were part of a publication and exhibit produced by the museum. We have remained in contact since then, and I have continued to exhibit their work over the years. I am pleased now to bring their fantastic work to Lux with their ongoing series, Troupe of Fledermaus, The Carnival at the End of the World, a story of a carnival troupe that travels to dystopian environments that have been affected by climate change or renewed from rewilding or replanting. Nicholas Kahn and Richard Selesnick are a collaborative team of artists based in New York who explore contemporary global issues through the creation of fictional worlds. The artists give us a glimpse into a time where the social and environmental issues that plague society continue to go unaddressed. The artists' timelines shift between the past and present, playing with optimism and pessimism while filling their work with humor, satire, and morbidity. Transcending time and place, their made-up mythologies and anthropologies serve as cautionary tales. Kahn and Selesnick utilize meticulously handcrafted costumes and props, desolate landscapes, both foreign and familiar, sweeping views, and theatrical stages as a backdrop for their photographs. The artists elevate the absurd by using everyday materials in unconventional ways. Kahn and Selesnick have participated in over 100 solo and group exhibitions worldwide and have work in over 20 collections, including public collections, including the Brooklyn Museum of Art, the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the Houston Museum of Fine Arts, the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, the Fogg Museum of Art at Harvard, the De Cordova Museum and Sculpture Park in Massachusetts, the Smithsonian Institution, and numerous corporate and private collections. In addition, they have published 3 books with Aperture Press, Scotland Futurebog, City of Salt, and Apollo Prophecies, and their most recent book, 100 Views of the Drowning World by Candela Books, is available now from our online store. Please join me in welcoming Nicholas Kahn and Richard Selesnick.
Thank you. Thanks, Andrew. Great to be almost in Encinitas via this strange strange condition that has brought us sort of there. And it's been fun working on the art with you and the whole staff. And Richard?
Yes, hello. I suppose I have to do this screen share.
Yeah.
So I'm going to attempt it.
Work on that. I think we shall begin shortly, yes?
Okay.
So we're going to be talking about the connection of animals and humans in our work through all the history of what we've been doing. You connected with this particular piece, Richard, at an early age?
I did, yeah. This is Titian's Death of Actaeon. It's in the National Gallery in London. And painting made a big impression on me growing up. Whenever I went to the National Gallery, I'd always go spend some time in front of it. In this particular image, Actaeon stumbles upon Diana bathing, and he's forbidden to see it, so she changes him into a hound and changes him into a stag and has her hounds rip him apart while she also shoots him with an arrow. So yeah, looking at kind of paintings like that, we got really into this whole idea of kind of these human-animal kind of hybrids that have recurred throughout our work. This is an early drawing of a woman turning into a deer.
I think I was connecting with the human animal hybrids a lot by being obsessed with Egyptian antiquities, and all the Egyptian gods all had animal heads or animal bodies and human heads. So that from an early age got me kind of addicted to that combination.
Yeah, this the Actaeon image and the person turning into a deer. I remember wandering the moors in Somerset where I grew up, and it was dusk. And I remember hearing that I was somehow caught between the female deers and the male deers, and they were kind of barking and shrieking at each other.
Amazing.
Yeah. So anyway, we did this image kind of we had an image of this friend of ours in this amazing dress seen from behind. And we weren't sure what to do with it, and we discussed it, and I kind of remembered this being between the male and the female deer out on the moors. And so we ended up putting antlers on her head, and in the background you can kind of see there's the male deer.
And then this one we shot in Provincetown years ago. We were being intrigued to try and do something related to William Blake, who was one of our favorite painters. And he always had these gigantic wings holding up his figures, these angelic figures with huge wings. And it felt like, oh yes, we have to try something where the figure is floating with wings. And so we asked a friend of ours who always had something in his freezer that he had recently shot. And he sent us over a couple of fresh duck wings. And so we tried those on Richard. And
originally I was going to use the computer to make the duck wings enormous, but somehow it felt more absurd to keep them the size of duck wings. But this is also part of a kind of general theme in our work that you'll see as we go along, are kind of winged figures and figures flying.
Richard is often wearing the boar outfit. It's a full body boar outfit. And I get to ride him often in the pictures. So this is an example of this from our series City of Salt, also in Provincetown.
There can be something absurd about the turning into an animal. Like we always liked Midsummer Night's Dream and the character of Bottom. And it's always good to let the animal kind of have a bit of revenge on the rider.
Yes.
Here he's being ridden, and here he's like sneaking up on the man getting the water.
Yeah, I've been destroyed and drowned in many times in those ponds. Oh,
Yeah.
Rousseau.
Yeah, Rousseau's sleeping gypsy. A lot of we get a lot of inspiration from looking at painting, painting and film, probably more so than photography. And so oftentimes when we're kind of thinking about images to do, we'll have like you know, someone and some props and trying to think what to do with them, and we'll think about art historical precedents for inspiration.
So that very much inspired this image also from City of Salt, where we had a friend who had a pack of wolves, which were his pets. And we put some cheese and some turmeric powder on him in the sand dunes and had the wolves tied to a stake so they couldn't bite the photographers. And they quickly licked the goat cheese off of their master, and we got our shot, which was a dream image, much like the lion from Rousseau.
Our also big inspiration is Joseph Beuys. And there's we love this piece where he came over to America kind of wrapped in felt, and they took him directly to the gallery and put him in the gallery with kind of like one of the walls was like a cage so that people could see in and see what was going on. And he was in there with a live coyote. And so getting animals involved, a lot of unpredictable kind of interesting things can happen. Yeah, so this is actually a certain project we did called Iceberg Freistadt. We did a card deck to go with it. And we changed the suits to be basically ice, weeds, chimneys, and birds. And so these are the kings of ice and birds, but the bird image kind of gave us an idea for a photograph.
Yeah, we had discussed doing this photo for a while, turning some of the main kings and queens from that deck into photos, and then we got asked by Jonathan Myberg of this band called Shearwater, whose music we love, to do an album cover for his album called Rook. And that was, he's a massive ornithologist, and we wanted to honor the rooks, so we got everything from the corvid family that we could in taxidermy and kind of low-grade taxidermy and better quality ones, made that same coat as for the drawing. This was done when we were living in Ireland around 2008. And so I was wearing real World War I boots in that shot, and we moved the birds around the body many different times because there was only so many of them. So we would put them all in front of my arms, then onto my face. I held one of the raven taxidermies with my mouth on its little claws to cover my face. And it was dusk, but we managed to get just enough light to do it. And then Richard worked in Photoshop after, added some more birds from Wikimedia Commons to get some of the details that weren't quite there in the original. And a lot of hours later, this was the result.
We're trying to kind of create a sense of mystery, like, is he a scarecrow, or has the body inside kind of actually turned to birds? Or is he wearing a coat that's somehow full of birds? This was taken on the island of Fogo. We went up there with a group of people, one of whom was a dancer and street performer who kind of dresses as a bird. We'll do impromptu appearances and street performances where she'll just suddenly appear in her huge bird wings and start dancing. So with our kind of fascination of birds and wings and so on, we used her in pictures.
And yeah, that's me dancing as Death, my leading role usually. And it felt absolutely right that those icebergs were real icebergs behind us, no Photoshop. And that's pretty much exactly what was going on there. That's magical dance. And we did a performance out in nature for people who didn't realize we were going to be there, which was fun.
A lot of times the goal with these things, maybe in a certain way even more than just getting the picture, is to actually go out and attempt to have some kind of transcendent experience.
Yeah, so this one certainly was an experience for you and your cousin. Richard once again plays the beast with a taxidermy model on his head, and his cousin was playing the pipes, and those were in the harbor in front of Hudson, New York in the winter. Real fog, real ice sheets going by, and he was shirtless for this.
Yeah, we kind of marched back and forth along the riverfront while my cousin played his tin whistle. At one point, a huge freighter went about 50 feet behind us. We kind of wondered what they might have thought if they looked and saw us. So yeah, this is my cousin again playing Pan. We definitely kind of look a lot of mythology, classical mythology, Egyptian mythology, all kinds for inspiration also. And so we have this concept that we'd go up to the top of this immense waterfall, and with him dressed as Pan, and have him do a dance up there.
This is one of the most recent drawings for the series that's up right now at Robichon Gallery in Denver. This one's about 4 feet across. And I was trying to talk about the sort of
like a
Minotaur and something from Marie Antoinette's time, and the kind of beast and the lady inside the beast costume, the decorative mad things that women were doing with their hair, and the kind of beautiful hair on the giant beast. And they're both losing their heads in different reasons for different ways.
Yeah, so this was a photo that's, I'm not sure if this one's up at Lux, but it's part of the same series, but it's also kind of on the Minotaur theme. We kind of almost imagine that this character has had some kind of assignation with the Minotaur. You can see kind of wandering back off into the woods.
Yeah, he seems quite relieved by what happened. It's a very odd expression. So this is a photo by Edward Curtis of a shaman posed in around 1890, I imagine, something in that era. His incredible photos have been a big source for us many, many times in costumes and tonality and the kind of magic of what was going on and costume ideas.
I've also had like a long-standing interest in shamanism, because oftentimes the kind of animal will act either as a spirit guide, or you'll turn into the animal to travel into the spirit world. So yeah, this is a kind of picture on that theme with a shaman with a kind of growing a weird horn. This my cousin again in the River Hudson.
He has a lot of hair, so it was possible for me to style it all together. So the horn came out of that and covered his face completely, because he also has a giant beard.
Yeah. He's got actual shamanic objects that he, when we got him into the river, it's actually very cold that day.
Yeah.
As soon as he got in there with the shamanic objects, he started kind of doing a dance and beating the drums and singing a song all spontaneously. And birds started flying overhead, and he started kind of singing to the birds.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Yeah.
That's in Ireland back in 2007, 2008. And that's I think a beech marten that was coming up to me, and I was wearing my best beech marten leather headdress, attempting to get him to come and eat some of the berries out of my hand.
Yeah, that's not a tradition that you'll try and seek out a magical animal who'll kind of talk to you, bring you messages from the spirit world.
Yeah, not unlike the badger who kind of hangs out with me when I'm on these lectures.
Yes, Joseph Beuys again, big inspiration. We liked his whole kind of like notion of the artist as a shaman. We also liked the fact that he had his own kind of weird shamanic origin story about which involved him somehow crashing in his plane on the Russian steppes and then being wrapped in felt and lard and being healed by the tribesmen.
Yeah, it's from our series we did the Circular River, a Siberian adventure, and I spent, I think, 5 months studying in Oxford, everything I could learn on Siberian shamanism, and we brought all that stuff into the series of photos, which were then folded and stained and done on a color Xerox machine from the original color ones that we made.
So pre-digital.
Yeah, around 1999, 98, 98 this was. And so that's, I think, Richard, 3 different times in 3 different outfits, part of a lot longer panorama.
Yeah, so this is generally kind of like the format and what these longer panoramas look like. We have there a giant salted anaconda skin that our gallery dealer gave us. And you'll see it makes an appearance later on. We kind of made it into a kayak. This is actually a Joseph Beuys piece, but being reenacted by Marina Abramovic. It's called Explaining Pictures to a Dead Hare.
I love the scale of the hair there. And so here I have a sort of semi-fetal lamb, just born lamb that got taxidermied somewhat badly and was given to me by a friend. And one of the talented interns who's worked with us in this strange costume that came up with, it was a bit of an ode to Julia Margaret Cameron, because I thought Lauren had a face very like some of those pre-Raphaelite friends that Julia Margaret Cameron shot in her general realm, and that's all sort of theatrical recreation of things I thought I could do really nicely. And so this taxidermy lamb came into use and stuck her in a pond, and lambs reappear again. This is a vegetable lamb, which is a sort of medieval and Renaissance concept of that there were plants that would grow wool and have living lambs on them. I think from someone in the Far East saw cotton and described it badly, and then it somehow came to the West. It's the idea that they grew lambs on plants. So I've pushed it a little bit further in this drawing and made little potato-like lamb heads underground as well.
Yeah, and yeah, this she's in this picture. The figure is wearing a kind of a helmet that's made of kind of curled and dyed rooster feathers, and it almost felt like a kind of a funny kind of alchemy, a little bit like the Beuys thing with the golden head. But somehow, if you kind of make this helmet of feathers, you might imagine you're actually flying. And
the dress was an actual 1860s dress that had been used so many times by a theater company that it was shredding in the most beautiful way and unwearable by anyone else. But
yeah, we tend to like our props to have a lot of history and wear. Yeah. We like the kind of fact that they've had a whole previous existence to kind of be part of the images we're making.
And so, yes, yeah. Same feathers. I created a pretty much a full body outfit covered in the feathers with lycra underneath so that it could be worn. His actual hair is popping through in the costume there, which we really like to show just that little dash of humanity.
And again, it's kind of like, you know, we just tend to kind of come up with these things and not always know what's going on. And this one, he almost looks like he's been tarred and feathered. It's hard to tell. This is painting by Francis Danby called The Poison Tree. We went to this amazing exhibition at the Tate Museum in London and saw there a whole exhibition of sublime landscapes from the 1800s. And the idea behind these landscapes was when you looked at them, you were supposed to feel awe, but you were also supposed to feel terror. And being that we've been photographing for years in so many bleak landscapes, we decided to kind of try and address that concept in a more head-on kind of way.
So yeah, this is a series, our Mars series, the Hourglass Sea, and this is something like a halfway between a rocket ship and a squid that we felt that they may have found there or used to get there, and it was birthing one of them.
It's almost like it could also be a seed pod, but we kind of like looking at a lot of natural forms to kind of like create kind of strange biomorphic objects.
I just remembered that we left that on the side of the street by a casino in Reno, Nevada.
Reno, yeah.
Yes, so someone has that. This is in Nepal. I was able to go a couple different trips there. In Kathmandu, this is before Christ, this amazing, really, really old sculpture. Shiva, I think, on a bed of snakes.
Yeah, Vishnu.
Vishnu, thank you. I always mix them up, and they leave offerings of marigolds all over it. And just the absolute awe of this spectacular, so much larger than life-size statue floating on these snakes
Yeah, I believe what it represents is kind of Vishnu dreaming the universe, and the snake kind of represents infinity.
Yes.
So we did, as part of the Mars project, we did our own kind of like slightly different, strange kind of version of it. We were kind of thinking, when we were thinking about Mars, we were thinking a lot about the fact that Mars is kind of what Earth might look like if everything just turned to desert. And so we were imagining terraforming and stuff like that. So yeah, we shot this out in the tidal flats and gathered seaweed around the kind of terraforming snake. And actually the stars in the sky, the constellation above him, we took all the kind of weird kind of protrusions that are on the figure and made a star pattern that kind of matches.
That's what it is. I couldn't remember how that particular one came about. We were very interested in the wet past of Mars and time travel to the point of Mars.
Around the time, I believe that somehow a class, maybe a high school class or something, figured out that a particular feature on Mars was a cave, and somehow they figured out that there might be water in the cave. I can't remember the exact story.
This is one of the cards from our tarot deck that was also related to that Vishnu statue. I wanted to see if I could make a costume made of snakes.
Yeah, we tend to kind of like these certain archetypal images will get in our heads, and we'll do different versions of them in different media for different projects, kind of a recurring thing. So yeah, this is William Blake. This is Nebuchadnezzar lost in the wilderness, and you can kind of see it's kind of like the bestial state of man. He's already starting to revert with his kind of beard and growing these kind of long fingernails and kind of claws on his toes.
And there's Richard being Nebuchadnezzar. It's part of our a larger panorama that we did for our Scotland Future Bog series. And we were in the midst of this insane landscape in Scotland, and Richard's on this crazy little island in the bog that's shuddering and moving as he's standing there, and every fly
the island was like jelly.
Yeah, everything was shuddering.
Kind of almost feel like I'm I'm supposed to be a kind of futuristic man-sheep hybrid. And that's all Panorama.
Yeah, I'm on the right. So this is pretty much a 360 panorama. It really looked like that there. We shot this with positive, negative Polaroid film, sheet film 4x5. Strange experience walking out there. And I think there was someone at the far distance watching and trying to understand.
Yeah, there were hikers going past while I was
yeah, they saw this strange sheep in the distance that didn't look quite sheep-like.
We also, the fleece we got was really absolutely fresh off the sheep. There were still tons of the lanolin in it and bits of dung and stuff. It like smelled to high heaven. And biting insects from all over the marsh kind of immediately descended on me.
Yeah, that's after we climbed a mountain to get to this incredible viewpoint over all the islands out in Isle of Skye. And those were some of the sheep fleeces. We got them from the bed and breakfast owner, had a stash of the village's sheep fleeces. So he lent us some of those, which was amazing. And we got up there and I made all this strange sort of rubber costumes and tried to get them on there. It's freezing cold in like March and they didn't quite fit the other two people because
we were screaming as we tried to pull on the rubber diapers. We had to actually resew them on top of the mountain. I almost imagine what's going on here is that this in this post-apocalyptic scene that they're almost like doing some kind of ritual or something, honoring the dead sheep, and then the wool it gives them. And this was yeah, go ahead.
It was done in the studio. We had a residency for 2 weeks at Phillips Andover at the Addison Gallery. And we had the beast in the cage with the various students and some of the teachers there helping us. They helped us sew the costumes and cut the costumes out and then participate in the joy. Things got a little bit out of control in my memory in that shoot. They were really gleefully attacking their fellow student.
Yes, they were, yeah. And yeah, this was, we were up on top of a mountain in Scotland again. With very little props. We had one stick, one hat, and one sheep's fleece, and we were trying to figure out what to do up there. And we had the idea of trying to reenact this Paul Klee kind of allegorical image that that I remembered seeing maybe 20 years before that I hadn't seen since. So when we got back, we looked at the actual image, which was this kind of an allegory of the Habsburg Empire. But again, it's like these kind of urbane, civilized European aristocrats, but in this very kind of bestial setting.
Similar image, that seems. This is one more from Fogo Island with some real icebergs behind, and we were playing with some of the traditions they have on Fogo of the costumery that they put on for mumming, usually around Christmas time, but we knew that tradition that came there from Ireland and England in the 18th century relates to some of the May Day festivals. So happy May Day, everyone. And this is relates to some in Cornwall, the various riding the horses and
yeah, they have these festivals there with hobby horses, where hobby horses will go through the town, and everyone will come out of the houses in fancy dress and start following them. It's kind of part of this. We're kind of now getting into our more recent projects, like the one you guys have up at Lux, which is a lot about the carnival. And during the carnival, it was like, at least in the early days, the days of the early church, it was a day where all the regular rules of society were suspended. So you could kind of burlesque the clergy and blaspheme and kind of generally kind of misbehave and behave in a more bestial kind of way just for a day. And so, yeah, there's another kind of image on that theme also from
Another
photo.
kind of hobby horse.
Yeah, another kind of hobby horse.
And I like the little turds. It seems that that have come out the rear end of the really obviously not particularly real hobby horse. Nice detail. Same cousin who's willing to get in any picture.
And yeah, this we often get given kind of fur coats, weird skins, weird taxidermies. This was actually we were doing a workshop in Art Yard, which is the art center in New Jersey, and someone came along and participated and told us that in their basement, the previous owner of their house had left behind this kind of unbelievable rotting stuffed taxidermy lion. So they actually brought it into the center for us to use during the workshop. So we had this kind of carnival man, this carny guy kind of pushing it along, and also with the monkey, that's an actual paper mache head, I think from the 30s, that the owner of the art center had to make this thing.
Enzer, and this is like two heads.
Two skeletons fighting over a pickled herring.
Yeah, it's an amazing painting, and we wanted to recreate this. So on Fogo, we knew we were going to try and do this. We brought our costumes out into the cold, and I had my mask made out of pearl buttons and my full pearl button outfit, and Richard put on the Nepali death's face, and we brought a codfish there. And the mythology in Fogo we were working with was the death of the cod had changed the whole island's economy because it got overfished. And so we were very much thinking of the Enzer and the mood in that, and it was unbelievably cold at that moment. We had to race across there with all our props and costumes and the beer not to freeze and our hands not to break, just to get the shot with the tripod and the self timer. But I think we got pretty close to the spirit of the Enzer in our own weird way.
A lot of these Enzer things are actually kind of allegories about like hardship in Europe. So there's also an amazing one of some carnival figures around a table of all kind of super unedible things, kind of eyeing them, kind of trying to decide whether to eat them. So it's kind of like a carnival at the end of the world. And looking at his work, that's kind of where we got that kind of concept and started working on this project that's been ongoing, both with the stuff at Lux and these circular images.
That's a similar day that we were out there on Fogo, and I'm in this costume I had made from some carpets that I had tied together to create this very fetishistic, almost African carnival atmosphere of the kind of beast who's got red streamers, and then those were codfish shapes that I had sewn and stuffed beforehand, and I loved the kind of very French revolutionary, elegant typography on them. They had good and bad sayings on either side of them.
And so, yeah, this was, we were also looking a lot at a kind of medieval dance macabres, and wanted to do basically a version, a dance of death with animals.
Yeah, that was the Beast Parade. These are the same masks I got years ago. A friend managed to get these antique Mexican leather masks that are made over wooden molds, and they have been super, super useful for doing innumerable pictures. And we also collect really old, very dodgy musical instruments and bad coats, which you can see endless fur coats to use for these things.
Yeah, so this the previous image and this one were part of the Iceberg Freistadt series, where we were kind of so our first project we did kind of on a bit of an environmental theme, where we're kind of started thinking about climate change. And so here we have Nicholas as a polar bear on a kayak, and this the kayak you can see here is actually made of the snake skin that you saw earlier on.
And this is a drawing I did about 5 or 6 years ago at this, that's on an antique linen, French linen sheet, 7 feet tall. So the guy's about life size, embedded inside this bear. It's based a bit on some of the costumes you have in like Bulgaria, where they dress up as a bear. And he's eating salmon and honey and two-headed, but he's inside there, and this man-beast connection going on.
He feels like he's kind of a carnival figure again. That he's almost like some kind of like dancing bear.
Yeah.
But it's also like he's kind of trapped in the costume. And yeah, after doing that image, like a year or two later, we saw the film Midsummer, which has this whole climactic scene of a kind of man who's sewn into a bear costume. It's kind of, there's an element of things like this where it kind of feels like it's almost verging into some kind of blood sacrifice.
Yeah, no, it was fun seeing a lot of our stuff kind of realized into that film in ways, because they're probably coming from the same source materials that we were. This is another one of these drawings, giant drawings, but then it was scanned. And it's Papageno, and that's drawn on a sheet I had from, I think, 1820, that someone had saved their sheets. And I love the idea of trying to paint a man who is covered in feathers, just like the parrots that he's got caged with him.
Yeah, it's almost like some kind of allegory about greed or something. That the hunter kind of loves the feathers so much, he eventually kind of turns into the thing he's hunting. And yeah, so this is the kind of beginning really of the kind of carnival project that's at Lux. We had this concept that we wanted to make posters for performances that never happened, all performed by the troupe of Fledermaus, a troupe of actors that also didn't exist, with the central figure in the whole thing being the bat.
We're very inspired by Wiener Werkstatt, all the whole amazing stuff going on in Vienna and secession movement. And this is partly, some of these are a room that they had shown at the secession in Vienna in around 1910 that had all these spectacular posters, many of them around the theme of bats as well, because they have a cafe Fledermaus and a cabaret Fledermaus there. That's the cafe Fledermaus original with all the tiles embedded like that. And we saw that, and I've always dreamed of doing something as powerful as that. So it ends up, after having done so many different posters and paintings, some were done on the computer, some were actual drawings, some are larger paintings on canvas, some are paintings on paper, but that wall is like 10, 11 feet tall. And so Lux has a version of it in the corner, but this is one of the bigger ones. And that drawing I did, it was inspired both by Egon Schiele and Oskar Kokoschka and the way they were drawing, but based on some of the amazing
one of the themes of the project is the fact that the bats up in our part of the world here have started having mass die-offs from the white nose fungus. So what will happen is they'll hibernate, but they'll have the fungus, and it'll be itchy, and so they're not able to actually sleep during hibernation. And so they'll scratch themselves until their wings start becoming shredded and not get enough rest and lose weight and eventually die during hibernation. And so we felt like the bat was almost like a kind of canary in the coal mine, a little bit like the bee, kind of going extinct and kind of like,
Yeah, there's more bat masks and death and the horn representing spiritual growth in certain Japanese costumes that we really liked, and use that to represent the white nose to some degree, as you can see the connections there. Always this white horn growing out in the center of the head of the bat, who's half bat, half human, trying to get some kind of empathy for the animals that we're losing at extraordinary pace. And there's the plague mask appearing in some of these.
Because we were thinking of the bats having the plague. We kind of brought in the plague doctor, who's kind of carrying the half bat, half human on his back there through the landscape.
It's a collection of masks, and yeah, the bats having to jump off the cliff, and it's in the caves. The bats, after this long winter where they're having these horrible bad dreams and they're itching like crazy, and their wings are starting to disintegrate, and then they leave the cave after the end of the long winter with the white nose fungus, and they just fall to the ground and die. So this is like lemmings going off the cliff in this one.
And yeah, again, kind of we imagined that death was almost like one of the carnival barkers for the project. And so here, Death is riding on a kind of bat-human hybrid up above the Cape Cod landscape. And we had various figures in our kind of version of the carnival. We had green men, we had the bats, we had Death, but we also had kind of a bird man that we called Feather Man. This again was created using those similar kind of curled rooster feathers that you saw in the piece earlier. And we actually had him as one of the carnival barkers in some of the installations. So you can see him in the background here, as well as a kind of hanging bat that's
Saint Sebastian.
Yeah.
And he's the Lux now. And then in the middle, this giant, he's like 7 feet tall, green man riding a kind of goat dragon beast. He at Art Yard, we were able to get someone who could connect him up so that every minute or so he would suddenly start shaking and juddering and all look like he was about to take off, and then it would go quiet.
Yeah, as if he was actually kind of riding, and then suddenly he'd stop again and be still. It was very cool.
We love possibilities of making these things come alive. This is a penguin mask I had and shot on top of a mountaintop not far from here.
Yeah, we actually, for this one, just to kind of give you an idea of some of the things we do sometimes, this is actually using kind of the old Hollywood kind of technology, where you would go and you would shoot a scene at noon, and then you would kind of darken the whole thing so that it looked like moonlight. So
yeah,
we can...
strong contrasty lighting works perfectly when you change the sky to a moonlit night.
And yeah, this William Blake again, these more winged figures. Kind of I think here this is Satan smiting Job with boils.
Yeah, those wings. The wings are made out of big, heavy suede, and they did weigh a lot. They had these little pockets in them for sticks to help hold them up. That's in the landscape here on the Hudson River, and you see all the broken bits of flotsam and jetsam there. We were looking at a lot of, it was right after the Fukushima tsunami, and seeing all this stuff floating out to sea and this strange ruins of a society, and the kind of fragility of nature and men when we're kind of building places we shouldn't be doing, had us sort of do something with this sort of Japanese spirit. And we were wandering out and found these dogwoods in bloom. So basically just around now in the spring, and did our bat elegy there.
Yeah, this is from the tarot deck again. This is the card of justice, and
Anubis.
Yeah, Anubis. Apparently, he would weigh your heart after you died. He'd weigh your heart against a feather, And if your heart was heavier than the feather, it meant you'd not led a good life and you wouldn't be reincarnated anymore.
Yeah.
And your heart would be fed to some weird beast that had the head of a crocodile, the kind of body of a leopard, and the hindquarters of a hippo.
Ma'at.
What's he called? Amat, is he called?
Maat. M-A-A-T.
M-A-A-T.
Yeah.
And your heart would be fed to him if you hadn't led a good life.
And then you wouldn't get to live again. That would be the end of your soul.
So we kind of like this idea of kind of animals as kind of the arbiters of justice.
And yeah, you see my obvious excitement over Egyptian art comes back in again and again.
Yeah, this is a scene from the movie 12 Monkeys. There's a great scene at the end where all the zoo animals are kind of running around the deserted city. So we kind of like did our own kind of version. We kind of built this weird looking city out of styrofoam and plaster and terracotta, and then used toy animals and dry ice to do a kind of apocalyptic scene in miniature.
Seems to be happening in cities around the world these days. Here in Wales, where the goats seem to be enjoying themselves.
And yes, this was a lemur that Nicholas had photographed at the Bronx Zoo. And we put him into this scene kind of, I don't know, looking like he's waiting for the end of the world.
It's come, sorry. Laika was always a figure that we thought was fantastic and involved in our Apollo Prophecies project. The dog was sent to space, and then Russia acted like he actually came back after 3 days circling up there, but they had a fake
about what happened to Laika. But yeah, Laika, I think Laika did manage to orbit the Earth 4 times.
Yeah, but burnt up on the way back. So they had no escape plan, so they had a fake Laika for the way back.
And so yeah, so this is again the project that's up at Lux. We kind of wanted to, we're thinking a little bit about kind of refugees and displacement, but didn't want to do something too kind of like hit you over the head about it. So we kind of do our kind of absurdist version with animals and carnival figures, so that it can be read in more different kind of ways. Again, here a kind of bat heading through the slightly post-apocalyptic looking landscape with all their luggage.
More of these bat heads I made in terracotta that we used in multiple times in these shots. And these are drawings. I did these drawings live from the model with bat heads when I'm drawing them, and those are some of the other terracotta bat heads between them.
And so yeah, this is drawing from the circular series. Nicholas did a bunch of heads with kind of animal. They're almost like helmets, but they're also live animals. It's a pangolin.
Who's to blame, some claim, for what's going on now. I think possibly the virus went from bats to pangolins to us in the markets.
One of the theories.
One of the many theories.
Yeah. So this is Hofsnagel. This is, he was one of the first artists to do botanicals and little natural specimen paintings. As well as being one of the first to do that, he was also kind of one of the last great illuminators. And we've had a long-standing kind of interest in kind of moths and butterflies being other flying creatures like the bat and like the birds.
And essential. So they're a friend of mine covered in butterflies in my garden. And
these are the things that have been being worked on during the residency.
Yeah, these are it's a dragonfly and these dragon-headed caterpillars that are Chinese, that are dancing in this sort of Ouroboros, snake eating its tail dance around the base of the caterpillar. It's about 5 foot square. And that's what's behind me right now is another drawing in pastel of a bumblebee that is absolutely essential for our plants being pollinated. So he's covered in the pollen, but his legs are kind of transmuting into the roots, the essential plantness. So it's this half insect, half plant prayer flag of sorts that we're building. And it's a two-sided flag, and it's got a strange pollen head on the other side as well.
Yeah, the idea is to kind of try and celebrate the insect. It's kind of unsung hero. There's yet more news today about a certain new kind of virus that's getting all the bees in England.
God, yes, I didn't want to read it. Too much bad news, too many viruses. Yeah. So is that about all that we have here?
That's it. Happy to answer some questions.
Questions, Andrew, say hello.
Oh, thank you guys so much. That was wonderful. Really great to hear the background of your work, especially in the context of animals too. I haven't heard that before, so but it really reminds me a lot of, I guess, our conversations, because I feel like every time we speak, we talk about animals in some way or another. Even today, we talked about the beaver in your backyard, Nicholas.
Yeah.
But talking about bats or penguins or even the badger that you had in your lap. I'm curious, before I get into some of these questions, what is it about animals that makes you both feel so connected, I guess, to the environment or even to each other or to humanity, as it were?
I looked at too much Richard Scarry as a kid. So I thought my life would always have, I would have animal heads and I'd be living in Richard Scarryville. And so I've done my best to do that existence.
Can we see your the badger that you have?
Animals can kind of represent a certain, at least if you're a human, a certain kind of force of chaos that can be a good thing. And then there's a lot to be kind of learned from one's own kind of animal nature, if you can get in touch. It's kind of like the truth of the body, which one can lose, especially in times like this where one's doing kind of Zoom things like this, rather than physical proximity. You can kind of lose the truth of the body bit. So it's kind of like this whole pandemic thing has almost made things go even further from the truth of the body than usual.
Meanwhile, the animals are coming back full strength because there's less cars on the road and everything else we're quieter, and they're enjoying their time taking back the planet. So that feels the one good thing to come out of all this.
That is true. I think it's wonderful to see the animals just walking down the street in all the news. Someone asked in the chat, any future pandemic art ideas so far?
I feel a little bit like when we did the whole project with bats. The entire project was about the white nose fungus, which was like, the pandemic in the bat world. And we did so many kind of bat human hybrids in that project that I feel like we kind of, we already kind of immersed ourselves in that. And then also our most recent project has a whole series of dance macabres.
Yeah. I've worn that death costume so many times that I now that we're bathed in the plague and death, I can't be doing that. We're looking to the next apocalypse, which is the insect apocalypse, in order.
Maybe not an apocalypse, maybe just something happier.
Hopefully happier. We're going to try and prevent that one from happening. So
they're all apocalypses for a positivity, right? It's a renewal.
Yeah.
So it's May Day, so we want to bring back the insects and we want to bring back the flowers and the plants.
Well, a good time of year for that. Someone asks, right now, the Getty is calling for copies of famous pictures reenacted, and there's a long history of this in Laguna as well. I'm not sure what Laguna, maybe Laguna Museum. Are almost all of your images recreations in the same way? What separates your work from those like copy attempts?
Yeah, generally speaking, we're kind of when we kind of use an image as inspiration, we're kind of like we're displacing it to a different world and reality. So if you take the one with the Paul Klee image and me and Nicholas up on the mountain, it's taking the kind of the original source material is from a completely different reality from the kind of what we were importing it into. So we're kind of, I'd say we do, it's more like a kind of mashup where we're taking maybe 3 or 4 different concepts all at once.
Yeah.
And maybe sometimes just using some compositional clues or a bit of atmosphere clue from a kind of some work of art.
It's like a dream version of an image that is associative, but not direct. And so what everyone's doing right now is sort of direct, but somewhat trying to use the crappy stuff they have around the house to have fun with the image. And yeah, we have fun with images, and it's often with strangely crappy stuff, but not in the same way. It's a slightly different flavor. So we've not been drawn to do that project just because it also feels like a bit like a busman's holiday.
It's definitely a replication of things versus an intention that you two have also. There's a larger intent that kind of takes on some of those ideas from those previous historical references.
The other thing is all artists do this.
Yes.
You know, we're just kind of like lifting the curtain a bit.
Mm-hmm. And someone else writes about Greek mythology. The hybrid human is often the punishment of the human-associated shortcomings, thinking of Medusa being punished because of jealousy, the Minotaur being created out of lust, or Actaeon being turned into a deer to be devoured by his own dogs. Do you feel like there is a connection to your own human-animal hybrids and what we have done to the planet or our own shortcomings?
Indeed, I think this person's spot on, and it sometimes is also our fears and paranoia and anxieties coming out, and the animal is a great way to displace it from yourself and place it into this other bestial realm.
Yeah, but you learn something by kind of like by going out and adopt and kind of getting into the skin of the beast. You also, you know, you kind of learn things and have experiences that are kind of outside one's day-to-day kind of existence as a modern human.
The hardships of when we're off in nature doing these experiences, and we're often very well masked and can't see much, smells really strange, and we're having this extremely odd experience, and it does get kind of oddly empathetic with the animal and shamanic in its feeling, the experiences of creating these things in nature in this earthy kind of way. There's always a hardship involved, and we do try to go with some kind of sacredness as well as absurdity.
Mm-hmm.
Someone asks, have you ever thought about collaborating with musicians? Oh, this is our friend Mark Adams. Have you ever thought about collaborating with musicians and composers and staging an opera? Your theatricality begs for a live performance.
Love to. I've done some opera sets. I collaborated with an opera composer many years ago and did sets for operas that were staged.
A bit of a disaster. The things we made collapsed during the performance.
Oh yeah, we're highly unprofessional. So but we looked a lot in college and after at a book, Hockney Paints the Stage, where Hockney had done these incredible sets for operas, and they were really inspirational for the kind of cardboard sets we were doing in college together when Rich and I first got together in the 80s. And so we saw opera and that artificiality as an amazing connection and working with musicians. So yeah, we'd love to. And we're actually, the latest project that we're doing, this rewilding project, we want to collaborate with, we have so many talented musician friends that we have done album covers for and worked with in all sorts of ways on music videos. So we're going to be coming up with these bestial songs, and we want to see if we can get some of our friends who are amazing musicians to record them and do something in this larger cycle of rewilding involving them all.
Yeah, we have also in the past, we have actually kind of recorded weird songs ourselves that we've kind of recorded and had playing out of beehives and out of horns and things like that. So yeah, we'd like to get more into doing that again.
That sounds interesting. Someone asked about the presence of children or the lack of presence of children in your photos. Why is that?
I didn't reproduce.
They do actually appear periodically. It just happens that in the images that we showed, there didn't happen to be any, but they're there sometimes.
I love it when we can. Any of my friends who have reproduced, I'm always quickly grabbing their kids and sticking them in costumes as much as possible to use. But yeah, it just happened to be what Richard didn't show today, but there are plenty in the dances.
A picture that we did with my son as a really, really young baby, with Nicholas dressed as a shaman.
Oh God!
Kind of sliding through the bleak landscape, holding baby.
I hope he has no memory of that experience, because that was pretty freaky.
It sounds like the children are pre-hybrid, right? They're like, they haven't evolved into a human hybrid.
We'll happily turn your child into a hybrid. Already seems ready to be unicorn, so we could go there with you. Next time we all get together, worry not.
Yeah, it was funny for all those listening. Right before this, my daughter came into the video and was wearing her bicycle helmet with a unicorn on. So it was very apropos for this conversation.
Yes.
Someone asked, could you speak to the hybridity again about human and animal placed in the environment in your art, and any underlying meaning about human and animal interdependence and impact of our choices on the environment and the future of the earth?
Yeah, I think that's what the whole kind of project you've got up at Lux, that was one of the underlying themes, was the kind of the bat and the human. So
we can't live without it. Yeah, we need to be paying more attention to that and not be paying attention only to capitalism's goals of higher profit every month. So yes, seeing
we did do an entire project about the bee. Again, that didn't feature in the slide lecture here, so it's kind of a recurring theme where we'll pick a certain animal that's under duress, whether it's the bee or the bat, and do a project about it to kind of try and empathize with it, and also get its plight a little bit out there, but also use it as a kind of as a starting point of inspiration.
Yeah, I would love to be another animal. It's envy. I want wings, I want fur, I want all the great things animals get.
Which animal do you want to be?
I'm pangolin. I'm going to be a pangolin when I grow up.
Richard, do you have a...
Yeah, I'm going to be a woodpecker.
A woodpecker. Oh, yeah.
Pileated woodpecker.
Yeah, he's got the red hair for it, so he's halfway there.
Once I have the red hair for it.
Someone asked about asking if you could talk a little bit more about the work of Amanda Palmer.
Yeah. We got asked to do work on a music video, art directing it. I don't know, maybe 4 years ago, it feels like, through a mutual friend that we had done. A member of Shearwater, who was playing with her, pulled me backstage and introduced me to Amanda. She lives nearby. Our worlds are pretty similar. We both live more happily in the 20s and 30s. So taste-wise, it was a natural and easy collaboration with her. And so that moved on to doing a whole series of photographs that we did for her album packaging and publicity tour that she's just ending now, and she's on lockdown in New Zealand, I believe. She's an amazing, fun muse. She's
Felt
like
a little
a
bit with her
goddess.
kind of like DIY approach and her ukulele. It felt like she, and her kind of 20s aesthetic, that she fit right into the troupe.
Oh yeah, she's totally. Her house is in the middle of nature. It's so easy to go shooting right on the land, and she's game to get lost in a stream naked. She's got a lot of the beast and wild in her, and is not ashamed of her body, and will go as dark and scary as you want.
Someone asks, your works often seem to have themes of morphing, changing, transitions, like post-apocalypse, birth on a planet, mashing up of two or more images. Can you talk a little bit about how you have changed, or how have you noticed each other changing since you first started working together?
That's interesting.
Morphing. And I think that also relates to another question, which is very similar, about how your artwork has evolved over time and how you, if you would have envisioned where you are now.
Well, we met each other age 17, and now we're like 55, 56. So we've physically morphed in strange ways over the course of our career, but we are kind of doing really oddly similar stuff in some ways to what we were doing at the very beginning of our playful games in college, dressing up in different time periods, writing books, posing and compositing photographs, telling stories to go into the places of our dreams. Mine were set in the 18th century in our college dorm. So and we're just doing this whole 18th century French Revolutionary stuff. I'm going back to some of the same panniers and other costumes that we were using in college. So in some ways, we are still playing the same games and lost in stone circles. All our obsessions were there when we first met at 17. But hopefully we're more sophisticated in the levels and ways that we're able to kind of juggle more things at once and build richer worlds. And I know we never quite finished a full project that had, but our dreams of what we could achieve, I think Richard and I came up with back in college. And I think we're now realizing them with our various books that we're doing that are full worlds with writing, these shuffleable novels, these tarot decks, because I did a card deck in college that was based on 18th century card decks. So there are so many of the kind of the germ of what we're doing now is stuff that Richard and I discussed when we were like 19, 20, 21.
How does the troupe decide where to head next? What calls them forward?
Yeah, we're kind of, I guess that's one of the things we're trying to figure out at the moment is where the troupe goes next. Sometimes it can be just like we get random residencies in places, and then we'll kind of like get into the mythology of a place a little bit, like when we went to Newfoundland, to Fogo Island, and we started doing research about the traditions there, about the kind of the fancy dress mummering they do, and about the depletion of all the cod. So sometimes when the troupe goes to a place, just doing the research about the place will help generate new ideas that we wouldn't think of if we were just strictly trying to think of things at home.
I'm hoping to do stuff set in Brittany soon, as we have a house over there that we use as a European base that we are able to get to when there's not lockdowns on the entire world. So that may be one of the places that the troupe goes to next, is some connection to Brittany and some of the history of the art that's gone on there, and the kind of Celtic pagan sources that lured me there when I first went there at 24, and that I got turned on to Brittany by looking at Gauguin paintings when I was a kid.
That kind of makes me think a little bit about some recent writing that I was doing about connecting different landscapes across the world and how we sort of are migratory people and connect different places. It's interesting that you two also are migrating to connect these environments as well.
We are. I mean, migrating is also it can be a problem because, like, for instance, when we were doing the whole project about the white nose fungus, we kind of found out that probably the fungus came over from Europe on the kind of probably on the boots of people going into caves there and then coming over here and going into caves. So it's definitely, it's a double-edged kind of thing, the whole migratory thing, because then you spread around things that can also be invasive to different environments. So it's got two sides to it for sure.
Yep. We're part of the solution and a large part of the problem. So yeah, it's an interesting thing. And yeah, we're also interested in everyone who's forced to leave and all the piles of things that refugees have and how to talk about that crisis, which is going to be a large part of the environmental crisis. So that's been deep in the work for a long time. So we love travel and we realize it's also part of the problem.
What a conundrum.
Yes.
Someone writes, I'm excited to get your current book. So someone ordered the book off of Lux, which is wonderful. And they want to ask if you can talk a little bit about how you would like the viewer to engage with it. So maybe you could explain it a little bit. You created it as a single unbound book, so they're just pages.
Yeah, so I would say that the pages on the bottom are kind of color coded by geographical area, and so it can be helpful. It can be helpful to kind of like the actual chapters don't go in a set order, but it can be helpful to read a few of the pages that are within the same geographical area in a row, as well as hopping around to give a little bit of structure.
Yeah, you could read it in each cluster and that could work, or you could shuffle and read a bit of each. You could just look at the pictures one day and you could read one story. We've heard some people like to read one story as they're going to bed each night and get through the book very slowly and savoring it, and others are binge readers. We like that you could shuffle it and everyone could have a different take on it, and if you read it in a different direction, it'll be a completely different book. But
we've also had people who actually, a friend of ours put all the pages up in their hallway, so it can be used as wallpaper also.
Yeah, and which is really fun. You could do a whole bathroom in the whole book, and then read a story every time you're visiting that place. So it's many options available.
Oh, well, I'm gonna veer off of that pathway there. But someone asks, have you considered making a game, a board game or something similar?
Yeah, we were talking about that recently.
Yeah,
we're definitely interested in that. I'd say the biggest challenge for us is that we're not necessarily good designers of gameplay. So it's the question really would be whether it would be a kind of absurd game with very little in the way of rules, or whether it would be a game that would be actually good to play. Those would be some of the issues.
Yeah, we spent about a month going through and talking about it back and forth and doing research on it as one of the many projects that this rewilding thing could turn into. And with us doing these various card decks on Kickstarter, we definitely thought a board game would be fun, but then figuring out one that wasn't a huge maker of things, like just something that was small and maybe cards that would make that could be spread out to make the whole thing. So we were going back and forth and then chatting to some other actual game designers, and we'd love a collaboration with someone who's really good in that realm.
I feel like when it comes down to it, though, that like really, for instance, our book that's behind you there, Andrew, I feel like that's actually that's a game. It's kind of like, it's like a puzzle. I think really we're probably better makers of puzzles than we are of games. Like a thing we love that was done a while back in England was this book called Masquerade. and it had beautiful illustrations, and the whole book mounted to a weird puzzle, and if you could figure it out, it would tell you where to go to kind of dig up this kind of like golden rabbit.
Yeah, I loved it as a kid, that book, and the idea that you could get this prize, this archaeological feeling thing. So that we've discussed as another book.
So I think, yeah, I think we're kind of better. I'd say we're better at puzzles than games.
Wonderful. Well, I do know it is 11:21.
Well said.
Dr. D has pointed out, he asked, what time is it in New York right now? So there you go. It's 11:21 for you guys. I'm going to let you go. I want to thank you both so much for tonight. Certainly, if anyone else has more questions, please send them to us. You can access our email addresses through our website and get connected to Nicholas and Richard, and we can make sure to put those comments also on the post that will go on YouTube. So all of this will be recorded and shared publicly as well. One last moment too, to take advantage of this. We are also a struggling organization in this world of change. And so any gift that you can provide to Lux to help support this program and other programs that we're doing is a fantastic help for us. So there are some more details in the chat, but also you can go to our website and give a little there. So thank you so much for your participation and attendance this evening. Have a great night.
Thank you. This was fun.
Thank you.
Bye.
Off to my animals.